All right, we are live. Silver Doctors live on air. It is Wednesday, the 18th day of the month of December. Excited to be back for another live stream, and we should be good to go with everything flowing relatively smoothly on my side. So, Mr. Paul Half Dollar, how you doing this afternoon?
Doing good today, Mike. How you doing? There's a lot of stuff going on in the markets today related to impeachment. So there's a lot of stuff to get into in today's show once we get going here.
Yeah, so I'm definitely interested to find out myself what is actually developing because I have not been paying much attention to it, I must admit. So, that being the case, let's give it a second. Let's acknowledge a couple people's presence this afternoon, and then we can get right into the primary topics. So, let me pop up this chat real quick, and then we can begin. So, it looks like we got a couple people tuning in. We got Silver Junkie. We got Just Us Texas. We got Tom. We got Chris. We got Tacoma Hooligan. We got Brian, low blood pressure. All right, so we got a good couple people in here. And we have a highlighted question says, I'm walking through Baltimore with 3 gold chains on. Okay, so be careful, my friend. Be careful. Okay, so let's get right into it. So, Mr. Half Dollar, what do you want to kick it off with today?
Well, apparently the big news today that everybody's kind of watching is that President Trump is the House is voting to impeach President Trump today. Remember, they approved the articles of impeachment, so the next step is actually voting to actually formally impeach him, and then it would move on to the Senate. That's how the process goes, right? I don't know if you showed, but just to show you that first tweet from President Trump, it just said that, today I'm going to be impeached. And then he's asking Americans to say a prayer for him. But it's interesting because, he's basically saying that I will get impeached. Everybody really can see through this as a hoax or as a script, as I would look at it. But, it looks like we're still going through these motions anyway. So the big question is, what does this mean for the markets, right? So that's kind of what I want to talk about here today, especially this morning, right? Because gold and silver were hit really hard starting at 6:30 in the morning on high volume, right? And then they were hit again starting at 8 o'clock, but they've since erased all of their losses. So I'm not sure that gold and silver are completely priced in for President Trump actually formally getting impeached here. Now, on Monday when we were talking, I was talking about, I think the cartel needs silver price under 17. And it looks like every time we pop above 17, they're just slowly walking it down. And today they beat it under 17, but we're right back up above 17 again. So this impeachment thing might be causing jitters. And it's interesting because, the dollar's been on a surge for a few days, which is totally weird because why is the dollar index surging if President Trump is about to be impeached, right? If there's uncertainty with the future of politics in Washington, you don't go running into the dollar, you go running from it, right? Yeah. And also that Trump's about to be impeached and the stock market hits record highs this morning. The S&P 500 hit another all-time record high today. So I'll just stop right there and let you get into that dialogue, Mike, and then I want to show you a couple interesting things.
All right, so from just that assessment there of what's going on, something smells fishy and it's not adding up. And so as you just highlighted, based upon all those concerns there, those are definitely some things that should cause panic in the markets and are just in confidence in this country in general. And so I would imagine that this is probably some type of setup for something that will be coming out of left field. And so once again, we anticipate this impeachment process moving, but yet will it actually go through? I wouldn't really bank on it, but I know the powers that be want it to go through. So I still stand where I left off last time we met, which was the goal is to get through this year and then to bring us into 2020 in a very interesting fashion. So once again, I think this is all smoke and mirrors until we really get down to the nitty gritty, which just happens to be the dollar and all the consequences that will come from that. So, yeah, go ahead and do you.
Yeah, interesting. Because, I just sent you another link there with another tweet. This was from back in January, but I just want you to put this tweet up on there because it's very interesting because this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. And we will just go once you pull it up, we'll just read the last sentence there.
All right, give me 1 second. Let me hide some stuff here, pop it up here. All right, it should be up there. There we go. All right.
This is the beauty of that Trump Twitter archive that I use all the time. So you got that up on the screen, Mike?
Yeah, so about the economy?
Yep. So the very last sentence says, "You want to see a stock market crash? Impeach Trump."
Yes.
Doesn't say remove him from office. It says impeach him. right?
Yeah.
So if they vote and they actually formally impeach him today, does that mean that today the stock market's going to hit an all-time record high and it's going to crash within the same day? I don't know. Because here's the question that I want to ask you. I don't know if this is even playing devil's advocate, but it's just a question, right? Could President Trump crash the stock market and say, see, I told you the market was going to crash? So let's think about that, right? Could President Trump actually crash the stock market? I've got some evidence for that I want to show you. And something that we talk about all the time, and it's the Exchange Stabilization Fund. And it's just the fact that you don't even really need to pull it up. It's just the fact that with the approval of the president, the Exchange Stabilization Fund may deal in gold, foreign exchange, and other instruments of credit and securities. So basically, if President Trump wants, he could crash the stock market, right? So there's just a few interesting things there. Or was that just something that he was saying, just bombastic and hyperbolic that he's always doing on Twitter? I don't know, but it's find it interesting. Thoughts there, Mike?
Definitely. Typically, I mean, here's the fact that there's a president, is the most powerful seat, most powerful person, or whatever we want to call it in the world, talking about impeachment and stock market crashes. That's never been done before, and so it will be very interesting for him to have used a narrative of all-time highs, enjoy this economy, enjoy the stock market surge, enjoy. Then all of a sudden, if they impeach me, it's going to crash. So is that like a forewarning? No matter what. And so common sense tells me nothing can go up forever. And so at some point, there has to be a correction. Now it's just a matter of what is a trigger and then how severe will it be. And definitely all this stuff right here would definitely not leave me confident in my financial future based upon the activities happening upon impeachment, and then a president who seems to be very bent on promoting the increase of a stock market that he ran upon saying was the biggest bubble that it's going to burst. So, yeah, it's risky. It's risky.
It's very interesting. So, I'm kind of just seeing here what's going to develop. One of the things that is interesting about this whole thing is, I've been noticing a couple different angles about, like, in favor of the manipulation to keep the stock market up. One of the things I saw on Twitter yesterday, I can't remember who tweeted this out, but it was literally something like the stock market has to stay where it is and slowly go up because it's a matter of national security. That was one of the things. And then the other thing is just the general thing that, well, stocks have to stay elevated or it ruins the pension and retirement plans. But my question with that is, is it really a matter of national security to keep the stock market from crashing? Because if you think about it, right, if our government officials are corrupt, right, then there's no real, security in that. If it's the deep state that's running things, then them looking after our national security is not in the interest of the average American,
Yeah.
And then on top of that too, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I just don't think that, I'm not in favor of keeping the stock market propped up or trying to justify any of these things that they're doing in these manipulations.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that, Mike?
I'm torn because what's at stake now happens to be the future of our monetary system, as far as the Federal Reserve being the leading central bank and us having the reserve currency. And so if the markets come down, that right there might be the trigger that leads to the reboot of the system or restructuring of the system, to where the amount of trillions upon trillions, or just a very livelihood of millions upon millions, probably billions of people that's interconnected with our markets, will be transferred into the hands of people that have shorted everything and bet and speculated against the day that the markets do crash. And so it's the people who are not aware of what's going on, which concerns me. So I'm not looking forward to that correction, but I know a correction needs to take place in order for things to start again or get back to some type of norm, or just for life to become a little bit more affordable, hopefully, before we usher into a solely digital economy like they're trying to do anyway. So, it's going to be a lot of pain, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is going to be a lot of pain. I favor the whole, let's just go ahead and get through the pain and see how we can make it better after the pain. That's my whole point. Because, if you've got a health issue, right, you take care of the health issue. You don't just let it go on and pretend that everything is okay. So that's where I come from all this. It's not that I want to see, like, Mad Max and stuff like that. It's just that the longer we wait, the more it's going to look like Mad Max.
Yeah, and we're in the U.S., or Uncle Sam is in a very fatal position. Like, at this current moment, due to all the manipulation, debt, enslavement, and all the things that's been taking place for the last century, that we've held the reserve currency position primarily. there's no real easy way of fixing it or fixing it in general. So there has to come a day of doom, unfortunately. And so now it's a matter of between now and the time that it occurs, what do you do to protect and preserve yourself? Because it's inevitable that something has to take place, and it's not going to be pretty. Like, there's no smooth transition into whatever is going to come next. So it's unfortunate that, our financial world has been based upon bonds and equities, but yet all that's subject to more repo activity and more debt and more credit extension and more everything that's caused the problems itself. So it's fatal no matter what, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, it is. And remember, as far as the bonds, we're talking about, several decades now of just generally falling interest rates. So there's no way to reverse it gracefully. It's the bond market's going to blow up. It's going to crash, right? Which means spiking interest rates.
Yeah. Now watch this. But before we move on, if you don't mind, before we move on, I want to check in with the chat. And so, because we threw out the question to me initially about the impeachment process, and so I'm curious to find out what the viewers might think as far as this impeachment process. Will it move forward? Will it not? Real quick, for those that are tuning in, give us a thumbs up as to whether or not they will be able to move forward, and a thumbs down as to whether or not they will not be able to move forward in the chat, and then we'll just go back and kind of tally it up and see what the viewer consensus might be. But continue on, Mr. $5.
Yeah, don't click it in the thumbs up or thumbs down below the video.
Yeah. in the chat part. Where is it? My chat is over here, but in the chat, thumbs up if they're going to do it, thumbs down if it can't work. I'm curious to find out, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's House yes, Senate no. I think that's probably what is the likely scenario that servant OT MHG is saying. It's funny too. Well, it's not funny. It's just interesting that, remember, I was saying I didn't think that they were going to impeach him. But why did I say that I didn't think they were going to impeach him? I said because there are too many chances to say things and expose things that they don't want said or exposed. But now that you're looking at this, they're saying, well, certain people aren't going to testify. So that's how they get around that, right? So still, it's like, they're not having, apparently they're not having the Bidens even testify in this impeachment thing. So it's like, stuff that would get exposed or said isn't going to get done because they're just simply going to ignore it. Kind of like that number 7 building over there in that one city. So you just ignore it, and just hope people don't realize what's going on. And then later when you write history, you still ignore it, and then it just rolls on as if nothing happened.
Or you spin the narrative of it in history books and say that it was a historical moment for our country, and it was because of this, this great thing happened. No, dang well, that's not the truth. And those that were alive during our time could tell you a different story. So
look at all those thumbs down, Mike. We're getting a lot of thumbs down. People thinking that he's not going to get impeached today.
Yeah. So, it's once again, it's in our best interest that he doesn't, because if he does, then that will probably be the trigger heading in. That will not allow us to even get out of 2019. So imagine how chaotic things will be during the holiday season. And, man.
Yeah, and Bobby Jones brings up a great point, because that's kind of what I was hitting at, right? Bobby Jones says they will let it crash to hurt Trump. So I'm assuming talking about the economy, talking about the stock market, right? So that's one thing. But then the other thing, what I had just said too, right, is like that other dynamic where, well, Trump could crash it if he gets impeached. So if he doesn't get impeached, right, then they'll crash the stock market, and then they can blame Trump. So, it's kind of like in Trump's interest right now for him to get impeached and then have the stock market crash, just so he can say, see, I told you, look, you guys are ruining this country for a hoax, for a circus, right? He himself has called it a circus.
Yeah. But watch this. If that does play out the way that you described it, they impeach him, then it happens. Then he say, I told you so. Then what? Then what's going to be that follow-up process? Who's going to become, and what's the, I've never really been paying too much attention to any type of procedures of this nature in general. And so this is all relatively a first time for me of going through all this and actually sharing my thoughts on it. So what will follow?
yeah, exactly. And then they'd have to change their campaign slogan from "Keep America Great" to "Let's get America back to the greatness that we had after I made it great." But that's going to be too many letters to string out across.
Oh my goodness! How do you make that acronym? That's interesting. Yeah. Oh man! So as always, for those that are chiming in, if you have any thoughts or questions or whatever, feel free to highlight at Silver Doctors. We'll touch on it. And then also, the phones lines are open. Give us a call, and we'll try to get you on air if you have a thought you want to share directly. So, yeah, let's keep it moving. So, Mr. $5, what else you want to touch on?
Here's what I want to touch on next. I don't know if I sent you this tweet or not. Did I send you the one about it would be so great? Because we need to kind of pick apart this tweet, because there's a lot of things we need to talk about in this.
All right, I'm going to pop this up, and then we have a caller, and I'm going to take this call. and then we'll get to those thoughts. So let's see what we got here. We lost him. Give me a call back and we'll get you on here. And so I'll pop up that tweet and then let you touch on it. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It looks like low blood pressure is trying to give us a call in saying it's not working. So I guess we'll see. Hopefully it'll work.
Yep. So go ahead. I got the tweet up on the screen. What are your thoughts?
Okay. So I'm just going to read the tweet and then let's kind of pick this apart. Would be so great if the Fed would further lower interest rates and quantitative ease. The dollar is very strong against other currencies and there is almost no inflation. This is the time to do it. Exports would zoom. So let's pick this apart. This is from just yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. This is just from yesterday. So this is fresh, right?
7:12 in the morning. Yeah,
so let's pick this apart, right? So it would be so great if the Fed would further lower interest rates and quantitative ease, right? Mm-hmm. So let's continue to crush the savers and let's print more money. That's not really so great, and it's definitely not what this country needs to address our health problem, right? Mm-hmm. It's what we could do to ignore our health problem.
Right.
But I find that interesting there. But this brings me up to the more important points that I want to talk to, because once again, do we got a call?
Yeah, we do have a call. 1 second. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh, there. What's your name, buddy?
My name's Mark.
Mark, how you doing? What's on your mind this afternoon?
I didn't hear you. Can you say that again?
What's on your mind this afternoon?
Yeah, you bring up deep state all the time. Everyone seems to. But it seems to me it's the Freemason network that exists around us that everyone ignores and no one talks about. That is the problem. Every president's been one. Every general's been one. But nobody talks about it. I was surprised I got through to even talk about this.
Yeah, so you're here. So that's one thing. Me personally, I've never touched on it because I've never dived into it. But knowing that it's all interconnected, and it's one of the things where I don't think it's anything that will be done directly towards that particular society, brotherhood, that will cause change immediately.
He worship Lucifer.
Did I get?
They worship Lucifer. I've read the book.
Oh, no doubt. I wouldn't be surprised.
You know, they're everywhere. They're your neighbors. They're everyone wearing a damn perp uniform. Judges, they're everywhere. And you do your studies and you'll figure this out. Anyways, I had to say it. I can't get this information out anywhere else. Everything's blocked, so
Well, you got it out today, my friend. Well, Mark, I appreciate you got it out today. So thanks for calling and sharing that.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, be good.
Yeah, like that's a good point, right? Because I guess the basic question is, what is the deep state, right? Some people don't understand what this is. This is how I think about the deep state, right? When I think about the deep state, I'm thinking American-centric. So I kind of separate it between deep state and deep state globalists.
Yeah.
So deep state can be like pro-America, or deep state, and that would be just deep state. And then deep state can be a deep state globalist, which is deep state, but they're globalists, right?
Yeah.
The way that I look at it is, it's this buddy system of the stuff that's really pulling the strings behind the scene. Let me give you a specific example of this, right? Mm-hmm. I know somebody in the Army, right? Let's just say that. And they were told, right, to change the scores on the rifle qualification for people so that they could get promotions, right? This is that buddy system. This is at that lowest level, but this is how this works. The system is rigged like that to promote certain people to get into certain positions to be able to do certain things. And then it just stays in there in perpetuity, right? So it's all this doing favors for you, doing favors for them, and really calling the shots behind the scenes. I was listening to, who was I listening to? I think it was Ron Paul the other day when he said something about the problem is that, all the good people that would want to go in and try and actually do something, you either assimilate and become a bad person or you're just gone because the bad people would just weed you out.
Yeah. Now, before you move on, we're getting a lot of calls here, so let's touch on them real quick. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, it's Francisco calling from Pasadena. So say, look, Mike and $50, you guys always run a great show.
Thank you, sir. What's on your mind this afternoon? Thanks for calling in.
I think this might be more of a $50 alley right there, but I'm not sure if you guys have heard the Mandalorian that's on Disney Plus, and it's kind of interesting because there's a couple scenes there where he's doing bounties and everything, and there's a big backdrop of the empire has collapsed, and there's a thing called imperial credits which are no longer functioning, and if you look in there, he gets paid with like a silver style currency, which he actually obtains and uses to melt down as the armor. So I'm thinking, what do you think about $50? Is this like predictive programming? They're letting us know that American empire is on its way to collapse, and that that our global currency reserve, the dollar, is going to stop functioning and go to metals? What do you guys think right there?
All right, appreciate the call, and I'll have touch that off the phone line. Thank you for calling in.
Hello?
Yep, thanks for calling in, buddy. We'll answer that off air, off the telephone.
Okay,
thanks.
Bye.
All right, Mr. Habdallah, touch on that one.
That's a great point. Now, I don't know exactly what he's talking about as far as like
the show.
Yeah, because we never turn on our television, right? I do not watch TV. I've literally seen 2 movies this year, and I don't watch sports, so I'm like totally out of pop culture altogether. But I will say this, right, because it's relevant. I do think, right, that like the globalists and the deep state and this and that, when they do their things, they announce what they're going to be doing through pop culture, right? So that it's kind of a way of washing their hands clean, right? There's no blood on my hands. We've told you guys, we've warned you guys about this. So anybody who suffers under this, it's your own fault for not acting. So these are the types of things that, yes, and Hollywood is totally CIA controlled. You got to stop watching Hollywood movies. I mean, that's just the very first thing that a person has to do, right? Because think about it. If there's like 100 movie releases a year, it is so easy to get like group think and to control the masses' collective thinking just by controlling 100 different movies a year. Yeah. And the people at the very top, right? When Hollywood and the people at the very top in politics, you don't get that way, just by being a good actor, right? You got to be doing all that dirty stuff.
Yeah. So, watch this. We have another call. Let's get this one. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from? Hello?
Hello, guys.
Hi
Are you there?
Is this low blood pressure?
Yes, sir. Low blood pressure. How you guys doing today? I hope everything is good.
Everything is going well, my friend. What's on your mind this afternoon?
Okay. I'm just you're breaking up. I'm just going to talk. Hopefully it gets through.
Yep, go ahead.
I wanted to talk about the stock market, go back a little bit. I don't think it's ever going to crash. I think, Trump and Mnuchin and the other 3 stooges, they got the reins, They're going to hyperinflate this market. They got the printing press ready, and I don't think it's ever going to go down. I think it's just going to Zimbabwe. That's what's happening. But I'm almost definite, but so don't buy any puts, on this market. It's just going to skyrocket to the moon. Yeah. All right, I'll let you guys answer offline.
I appreciate you for calling in, my friend. Thanks.
Here's the thing about the hyperinflation before the crash. I wouldn't agree with that, right? Because if the stock market hyperinflates away, some people can learn and get smart and take their money out and convert it into other things. Right. But, how do you really destroy America and make Americans get down and out for the count? You got to crash the stock market. Right. Mm-hmm. Because half people in America don't even own any stocks anyway. So the half that do, you really want to affect them, because we know that gas prices are going to be one of the ways that they bring on the pains of the United States. And that's going to hit everybody, especially like the half of the people that don't have stocks that rely on gas prices not going up to sustain themselves at their current level. So the other half of the nation, you really got to destroy them. And the only way to destroy them is to bring these markets down first before the hyperinflation, because you don't want any people moving out of a hyperinflated stock market and into other things that have yet to hyperinflate. So we'll have to see. Your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, and majority of the holders of a good portion of the holders of the equities or stock market itself happens, I would imagine, to be the older generation, because they're the ones that are anticipating retiring, and so their portfolios consist of a lot of financial products of that nature, to where they're not going anywhere because they're dependent upon that to continue to grow so that they can retire and hopefully would be able to draw off that for the rest of their lives. So they're not going anywhere. So that's going to be funds that's going to be parked there for a while. So it's just a younger generation that may not participate, which is ideal. So we have another caller. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, go ahead. We hear you.
Oh, okay. It's just delayed. I'm just going to ask my question real quick. It has to do with a recent Reuters article that came out, and it was about Trump and how he's setting up with the Army. Basically, they're setting up their own private, the special medals that they're setting up to compete with China. How they're doing the real rare metals And I just wanted to get your take on. I'm going to let you go. I'm getting a lot of feedback and stuff, and you guys can answer off there. Thank you.
Appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for calling in. Mr. Half Dollar. I saw something about it, but I didn't click to read it. But did you happen to? Are you familiar with what he was talking about?
Yeah, I'm kind of familiar. As far as the Army itself in the most recent developments, I know pretty much what he knows, but basically referring to the fact that the Army is going to start securing rare earths. So I didn't read that article, but I do have a couple comments about that, right? This is something that has been developing over the past few years. I can't remember. I think it was 2017. It was 2017, but in 2017, the United States under the Trump administration came up with like a list of like 22 strategic materials and strategic metals vital to the national security of the nation. And it's interesting because the platinum metals group, or maybe it was just palladium that was on there, but it was listing these things and talking about we need to be able to source these and we need to be able to get these on our own and not have to rely on other countries that are potentially hostile or going to be hostile to us in the future. So this is something that's been developing for the last, while. As far as putting the Army in charge of it and getting, I mean, I don't know. It's like, I think about like the construction crews. When you go by a construction crew and you see like one person with a shovel digging a ditch and 8 people standing around watching them digging a ditch, it's like, that's going to be very slow to get these rare earths up if it's something like that. But, so this is one of those things where the United States doesn't have a lot of these rare earths that are vital to this high technology that we have today.
Yeah. So as you're speaking.
Oh, and that's another thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I just thought about that, right? The Space Force is officially a thing. How much silver are they going to need for that? They're going to need a ton of silver and precious metal to stand up a Space Force.
Yeah. And so as you're talking, I ended up pulling up the article that the gentleman was referring to and put it in the chat. So it says, exclusive, U.S. Army will fund rare Earth's plant for weapons development. So it shows a little bulldozer digging in the earth. So yeah, definitely they are in need of all the materials for war. So I'm assuming that's still in the books at some time coming in the near future. So yeah, not good news.
When I emailed the guy who came up with the Atlanta GDP now, and I trolled him and I asked him how war does on the economy, he said 12 to 14 quarters of growth. Think about this. We might get a little boost here if there's some money that's spent quickly on the Space Force, because to stand up an actual branch of the military, there's going to be, it might not be over the economy as a whole, but if you're around any of these areas, there's going to be like jobs and some sort of build up one way or another. So it might provide a little temporary boost here. So I was just thinking about that yesterday. Did you think about, because if we're not going to start a new war, well, how are we going to keep that defense spending? Well, start a Space Force.
Yeah. And so I saw something about, I'm not sure of how far it's gone, but there's been the 1.4 trillion passed as government budget. And I looked through some of the breakdown, and I think I saw 420 billion or 420 something. It was a large amount to military, defense, and space, something and another. And
it was way more. It was like 723 billion or something.
Okay, my numbers is off. Let me pull that up. But man, that's one of the things where 1.4 trillion is okay. Like, man, like that's interesting. That's not going to be nowhere near enough, but they ought to try.
Yeah. and think about that, right? Think about this. If you're spending let's call it 750 billion. I can't remember the exact number, but if you're going to spend, let's call it 1.5 trillion, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're going to spend half of the entire budget on the military, right? And then how much of the rest of that half is going towards interest on the debt, Social Security, Medicaid, and all the other entitlement programs? And then what's left over for everything else? Like nothing. There's not a penny left over for anything else. We're going to be running like $3 trillion deficits here pretty soon.
Yeah. Congress jams tax repeals and 1.4 trillion spending bill. So I would love to see the actual breakdown of every single dollar where it's supposed to go, because once again, it's so much special interest and lobbyist funding and all types of funds in there that will not actually serve the people any good whatsoever. It's unfortunate. We're getting duped once again.
Yep, it is. But just to kind of close up here today, Mike, I wanted to close off about that tweet because President Trump's back on the dollar again. And I just wanted to dissect this for 1 second.
All right. So we talk about the would-be so.
Yeah.
Okay.
The dollar is very strong against other currencies, and there's almost no inflation. Now's the time to do it. Exports would zoom. Remember, when I was talking to that high producing wheat farmer out of Kansas, right? He was saying that, if the dollar weakens, that's just going to be a wash for the farmers and not really do much because their input costs are going to rise. And then that's going to hurt everybody else because everybody else has got to deal with the consequences of a weaker dollar. That's number one. And number two, Secretary Perdue, right, of the USDA, right? He's the USDA secretary. His name is Sonny Perdue. He said a couple of weeks ago that, China's not really buying anything else. And, just this morning, articles are coming out saying, well, China doesn't really need to buy anything else anyway because the dollar is strong. They can just go through Brazil and Argentina like they have been doing to keep on importing those soybeans. So it's like, danged if you do, danged if you don't. It's a catch-22. There's no good solution to this, Mike. There's no good solution because no matter what, if you weaken the dollar, you're going to hurt everybody else. If you don't weaken the dollar, then you still got the farmer issue going on. So there's a lot of things that just has no good solution to this. Yeah, except pain, right? We keep putting off the pain.
It's inevitable. And so I've witnessed all the developments as far as China looking to set up deals with Argentina. And looks like they're spreading their wings everywhere. So they don't want to be dependent upon the USA because of all this trade stuff. They know they can't count on us anymore. And so they're basically setting up a plan B so that they can make sure everything's covered so they can feed themselves and do all the things they're going to be doing for the Belt and Road Initiative, because everything they're doing is in preparation for the Belt and Road Initiative, which is underway. Now it's a matter of getting all the deals signed, all the countries on board, so that the day they make that announcement saying that you no longer have to only use dollars when you deal with us, or we will no longer accept dollars. And at that point, everything will be laid out, all the bilateral swaps, all the exchanges, all that stuff will be ready to go. So, and then where will that leave us? Whatever President Trump or whoever else will be talking about, the dollar is under threat. It's a national security. And so is it really a national security when you've been weaponizing the Federal Reserve note for the last several decades to benefit only us at the expense of the rest of the world? We'll see.
And it hasn't really benefited us, as in the majority of America. It's benefited the deep state in Washington, D.C. That's who it's benefited. Low blood pressure says, Paul, go to OCS. That's Officer Candidate School. Like, become a lieutenant flying, got my space alien as co-pilot there. I don't know. Like, I would not definitely go back into the military. It's one of those kind of love-hate things, and I'm glad I had the experience, but at the same time, I don't wish it on anybody.
I wouldn't do it myself. And so, watch, I see something here from Seth. It says, Dow to silver. Dow to silver is 1-to-1 ratio equals level playing field.
yeah. Because, I think the gold to silver ratio is going to parity. In fact, I think silver ultimately could even overshoot that. Because, the gold is, permanently pretty much stockpiled, whereas silver is used much more. So we could see a reversal in fortunes here in the very, very, very long run. And I had another point, but I can't remember it, so keep on going there, Mike.
Yeah, so no, that's about it. So we about 30-something minutes, so get ready to dial back. Got some interviews coming. With that being the case, Mr. Halfdollar, any last thoughts you want to leave us with before we sign off officially?
No thoughts other than, we don't have a trade deal with China. We don't have a trade deal with Canada or Mexico. All we have is talk so far. Nothing's been signed. Trump has not been impeached. Supposedly that's going to happen today. But my point is there's a lot of these geopolitical and economic uncertainties right now this week. So, this is one of those weeks where if you have a vested interest in gold or silver or in the stock market or in anything financial like that, you need to be paying attention to it, right? Because if it's a vested interest in gold and silver, gold and silver could take off here, or we could see a better buying opportunity for that matter even. Or if it's the stock market, well, what did President Trump mean by crash the stock market, So my point is there's a lot of stuff going on. And right now it seems kind of stable. But under the surface, there's a lot of trouble brewing, Mike. Yeah,
I would agree. So get physical as best you can. Do all the things you can according to your knowledge base to prepare for change, and then pray and pray some more. And just trust that the Lord will take care of everything as he always has and always will. So there's nothing new under the sun, and that's a good thing because we've been here before just in a different sense, and we always make it through. So definitely. And so this, my new approach heading into 2020 is really encouraging people to focus on their number one asset, which to me happens to be your faith. And so your faith is what will get you through everything. So that's a whole nother subject matter. But with that being the case, it's been great hanging out this afternoon. Be back Friday, same time, same place. Between now and then, tell a friend, share this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you come across any news worthwhile, news@silverdoctors.com, or just put it in the bottom of this video here and we'll try to get to it and touch on it in the next live stream. But other than that, today was a great live stream. We got a lot of calls. We got more calls than I was actually able to get to. So we got to find a way to, dedicate some more time to the phone lines, but we'll work it out. We're still a work in progress. So other than that, be blessed, be safe. See you guys later. Peace.